everybody. Welcome or welcome back. I hope you are all doing well. Today we're going to talk about journaling. I've gotten a few comments under my how to finish a first draft video, people wanting me to continue that series talking about writing. The problem is I haven't actually finished a book yet, so I sometimes struggle to think of like actual writing advice. Like I had just finished my first draft and I felt like I'd learned so much over the process, so that was why I had felt like I could make that video. But it's like, until you guys actually read my writing, why do you want my advice? You know, let's make sure I can write. Let's make sure people want to read my writing, and then I'll make more writing advice videos. But there is something else that has really helped me with my writing process that I haven't ever talked about on the channel, and that is journaling. So I thought we could talk about journaling today and like why I think it's beneficial for authors and why I think if you're writing a book, you should be journaling. I mean, you should do whatever you need to do for your own process. Obviously, you don't have to listen to me. I'm just a random gal that posts videos. But in my opinion, it's helped me a lot, and I want to tell you why. Here are my completed journals here. I already took pictures for the thumbnail. I don't know why I'm messing around. This is my current one. It's obviously bigger than all those. We're gonna break it all down, don't worry. In my early days, the journals were more like bullet journaling. I bullet journaled basically all through college to like keep myself on track, keep myself on schedule with my assignments. And by all through college, I mean I started in 2019. I had already been in college for a bit up to that point, and I wasn't very good at keeping track of my assignments, and I discovered this way to keep myself on track. But for my early journals, the first half of it was devoted to my weekly schedule and my assignments and stuff like that, and then the back half of it was where I just kind of journaled my thoughts and my feelings and my emotions. And when I started writing a book, that was when I decided to have like a dedicated journal for thoughts, feelings, emotions, and for practice. And I feel like it's been such a huge piece of my writing process, and that's why I want to talk about it. So I'm talking about journaling very much from the perspective of it supporting writing a novel. But if you just want to journal more in general, this video might still be helpful, but just know that the angle that I'm coming at it with is like very much supposed to be advice for someone who's like writing a book, and like how I kind of work it into my writing habit. And with that, let's dive in. So my first piece of advice is to get over the fear that somebody's gonna read it. Look me in my eyes, look me in my eyes. I know the fear is there. I know it's there. I'm calling you out. I felt it too. It's weird, isn't it? You start to write something down and you think, oh my God, whatever I'm journaling about is so weird. What if I die tomorrow and my heartbroken family wants to bond with me, wants to feel like I'm still here? And my mother, my lovely, wonderful, loving mother, picks up one of these journals and opens it to my most recent entry. And I'm like, why do people find hentai appealing? Like, I'm an accepting person, you know, to each their own, but like, what is it about hentai that's appealing to people? I just don't understand. And like, that's my most recent journal entry. Honestly, that would probably make my mom laugh, but that's not the point. The point is that you get this like weird idea in your head of like, what if somebody did read this? And I feel like that has genuinely stopped me at points from being as honest with myself as I needed to be in my journaling and trying different things and whatever it might be. No one's gonna read your journal. And like, I mean, I don't know your life. Maybe your relative or partner is kind of intrusive, but if you are genuinely afraid that there is someone in your life who would read your journals, and that's like a valid fear based off of their behavior, that is maybe its own thing to unpack separately, right? If you have all like good and supportive people in your life, they're not reading your journal. And I have told my family if I pass away not to read my journals, and they were like, why would we do that? I was like, I don't know, it was like a weird fear of mine. Anyway, you got to get over it, because you got to be willing to write whatever it is that's in your heart on the page. One of the benefits of a journal is that it is a no judgment space for all of your thoughts and feelings and emotions. So your deepest, ugliest emotions, your worst jealousies, your weirdest crushes, your all of that kind of thing. A journal is the place for that. It's supposed to be a safe space for you, and you gotta think of it that way. The journal is not judging you. The pages are not judging you. So as long as there's no one who's gonna read it who's gonna judge you, you shouldn't judge yourself writing in it. My second piece of advice is to work it into your actual writing session somehow. I feel like this is the most reliable way to actually consistent journal, is to think of it as a part of your overall writing session. So when I sit down to write, the first thing that I do is journal. Sometimes it's just a few sentences, and sometimes I end up journaling just like pages and pages and pages, and I actually never get to typing into my document. But that's okay, because like I said in my first draft advice video, no writing time is wasted time, and journaling time is not wasted time either. But if you are writing, you are not wasting time. No matter what it is you are writing, you are not wasting your time if you're writing. That is like the most important thing you can understand. So journaling as a part of my writing sessions is how I've kept it up so often. I do journal outside of writing sessions sometimes, but it's mostly just when something happens and I'm like, I've got to get these thoughts, feelings, and emotions out on the page. There are some people out there who recommend journaling like right when you wake up in the morning. There's specifically a book called The Artist's Way that really recommends this thing called your pages, where like you wake up right in the morning and you just like journal out 3 pages. That is wonderful. That is great. For people who have the luxury of their writing or their art in some way being their full-time job. Some of us have jobs. Even then, like in the book, the author of The Artist's Way like talks about how it's like, even if you have a full-time job, like I've known people who have gotten up at 5 in the morning to do their journaling pages before their early morning jobs. It's just not realistic, and it's not a pressure you should put on yourself, I think. If it's realistic for you, then great, and if you found it really helps you, then I think that's amazing, and if it's something you want to try, fantastic. But writing 3 full pages, especially in a journal this size, for me would take probably like 30 minutes to an hour at least. And I do not have 30 minutes to an hour before I start work every morning to just sit and journal. I work really early, okay? I work on Central Time hours and I don't live in Central Time. Anyway, I've just found that actually working it into my writing sessions and journaling before I start writing feels like a warm up almost. It's like warming myself up, getting myself in the flow, getting myself in the groove, so that I'm not like cold when I go and I look at my actual book. Because I find that if I dive into a writing session and I'm just like, let me open the book and look at the first sentence I see, I'm just immediately like brain off, head empty, no thoughts, don't know what to do, don't know what to write, that cursor is just blinking at me, what am I gonna do? And journaling first just kind of gets you in the flow, you know, it just kind of gets you moving and grooving. So that's my advice on how to do it consistently. But if you don't want to work it into your writing sessions for whatever reason, maybe when you set aside time to write, you don't have that much time, and so you don't want to spend time journaling in the time that you have to write, then I just recommend honestly setting a reminder. That has kind of helped me too at points, because I've wanted to journal a little bit outside of my writing sessions more, and I just always forget. I won't write for like a week and I'll pick up my journal and I'll be like, oh my God, I didn't journal for the past week either. Like I didn't write and I didn't journal. I have found that actually like setting basically like a recurring to-do list item to journal has actually gotten me to do it more often outside of my writing sessions as well. So if you are not an author, or if you can journal during your writing sessions, or if you just want to journal outside of your writing sessions, then I think honestly just setting a reminder. Now, I've given 2 pieces of advice already, but I haven't really tackled the 2 main questions, which is, why has journaling been so good for me? And what do you write about when you journal? Let me tell you about the quote I saw that changed my life. A Miss Virginia Woolf, you might have heard of her, once upon a time made a comment somewhere. I don't remember. I saw it written down somewhere. I don't remember like when or where she said it or what she was quoted in, and I'm not gonna look it up. But she said an author's journal is like an artist's sketchbook. And that perspective was just something I had never thought about up to that point. I feel like I had always thought of a journal as like, you write about your day, right? Like, dear diary, this is what happened today and this is how I felt. And that was why having it all in one notebook for me, like I said, I used to do it, where I had my weekly spreads on the first half of the book, and then I had like just my day and my thoughts and feelings in the back half. Like, that's what I always thought journaling was. And that was why I only ever really felt the benefits if I was really upset about something, because then it's like, now I'm getting out my like negative emotions and I can like see the benefit of this because I feel better after doing it. But when I saw that she had said that you should think of it like a sketchbook, I decided to start kind of trying that. May or may not be related to my book. Like, sometimes it's just exercises, sometimes it is writing about my day, but it's writing about it in a more like narrative sense. And then sometimes it is related to the book. Sometimes a scene isn't working when I'm trying to like type it out, and so I'll get out my journal and I'll start trying to write it out. And the crazy thing is, I've seen so many authors recommend using a journal to write your first draft because it feels so much more official. And like, you're writing with pen on paper, and so you can't erase it, and it makes you think harder about the next words you're writing down. I have like the opposite advice, which I guess is just proof that like you should find the artistic method that works for you, you know? For me, I feel like my journal is like so unofficial. Like, if I write it in here, it basically doesn't exist to me anymore. Especially if it's the intro to a scene that is really like escaping me. I will sit with my journal and I will just like try the beginning of it over and over and over again until I'm like, yes, that is what I want. That is how I want it. Okay, cool. Now I can type it into my Word document, which feels official and permanent, which is weird because that's like the opposite of how other people feel about it, because you can very easily erase words on the screen and you cannot very easily erase words in the journal. I don't know why I feel that way, okay? But I think of the journal like the sketchbook. If it's in there, it doesn't matter, right? So I'll just try over and over again until I like what it looks like, and then it goes into the document. That's only if I really get stuck, but I also use it, like I said, for exercises. Like sometimes I'll see writing exercises or I'll think of one and I'll be like, yeah, you know, I want to work on my description, or I want to work on my dialogue, or I want to work on this or that or whatever. I think a journal is a great place to do that too. And so that's some of the stuff that I'll do before my actual writing sessions, is like sit down and maybe try like an exercise or, you know, whatever it might be. I also think writing about your day, I've heard a lot of people say when it comes to journaling that part of what they struggle with is knowing what to write, especially when it comes to writing just about your day. And you'll hear people say, well, it was pretty mundane, it was boring, I went to work and then I got gas on my way home, and then I picked up, you know, drive-through, and I went home to my partner and we watched a movie. What is interesting about that? This is where we're gonna get into what might be my more like controversial opinions about like reading and writing. And there's kind of like a twofold reason why I think it's important to kind of break yourself of that mindset that the mundane pieces of your life aren't worth writing about. The first is that most books are about human beings, and human beings lead mostly mundane and boring lives. And that's not to say that you should write a book entirely made up of the mundane and boring moments of people's lives, but if you're writing about realistic people, there is going to be at least one moment in their book where they're doing something mundane and unimportant. I don't know how to explain how I feel about this. Observing the mundane in your day, in my opinion, is how you become a better writer. Because at the end of the day, 90% of our lives are mundane and boring. And I think a lot of people think that writing is somehow coming up with an interesting enough plot where enough stuff happens to the characters that the reader is hooked. Like the plot itself is what keeps people going, you know? And the books and the TV shows and the movies that are actually like that tend to be the ones that are thought of as more fun, I guess you would say. Because I think about shows like Pretty Little Liars, or, you know, what's another example? I don't know. It's like one of those shows where like every episode something insane is happening. It doesn't feel real when you're watching it, but that's not like the point of a show like that. So I'm not criticizing it. I'm not saying that like it shouldn't be written that way, because a lot of people love Pretty Little Liars, right? There is like a time and a place for that. But think about how often you're reading a book or you're watching a TV show and what you're watching the characters do is something mundane. They're at a gas station. They're in a car, they're in their house watching a movie with their partner, like I said. To me, anyone can come up with an insane plot where every page turn, something else crazy happens. But that doesn't make a good book, you know what I'm saying? For starters, it's just great practice to try to capture the atmosphere of these different spaces. So the atmosphere of a gas station is something like, if you live in America, we've all been to a gas station. We don't have very good public transport, so odds are you've been to a gas station at some point. The question is not, is a gas station interesting? The question is, can you capture the essence of a gas station? Can you write a realistic enough description of a gas station that somebody who's been to a gas station would read it and recognize the feeling that you're describing? I think about banks. Banks have such a specific and like sterile atmosphere. A lot of banks have tried very hard to get away from that by like remodeling, and like now there's all these open spaces and you go to a bank and there's like couches. They try their best to make it casual. It doesn't feel casual. Like a bank will always feel sterile and separate from human life, and like a place where almost humanity doesn't exist in a weird way. Maybe that's just been my experience at the bank, I don't know. But whenever I walk into a bank, I feel strange. But then you think about like how gas stations like almost always feel dingy. No matter how nice an area of town you're in, a gas station has like a dingy atmosphere to it that just is always there. An office, like a lot of people work in offices. Like if you go to an office, can you accurately describe your office, you know? Can you describe not just like the physical space, but like the feeling of being in that space? But if you're writing a book about, especially like Earth, like if you're not writing a fantasy, your characters are probably gonna go to the gas station, right? Your characters are probably gonna go to the bank at some point. And like what's interesting is like the conversations they're having and the interactions they're having and the feelings they're having, the overarching plot of the story. Why are they at a gas station? But you still set those moments in these places that everybody visits. So you can find these moments in your day where you can kind of snapshot it and say like, yeah, this is an experience I have every day. I should try and write about that. And that's where I think a journal is so powerful, because you can sit there and be like, okay, what's a moment from my day that I can immortalize? Like, what's a moment from my day that I remember enough now to like capture it and put it on the page and really like describe it the best that I can? And that is what is going to help train you to then, when you're thinking about your characters and the moments of their lives and like the rooms that they're in, like how do you transport the reader there? How do you describe it accurately? And not only that, but if you think of these things as mundane and boring, and I'm not saying that they aren't when you're experiencing them sometimes, in order to be an author, I think you have to be curious about human beings, and I think you have to be curious about like their life and their experiences and like what motivates them and why they do the things that they do day in and day out in their lives. And observing yourself and how you move about in your day-to-day life will tell you so much about human beings in general. Then you start to observe your family members a little bit, your friends a little bit, and you think to yourself, like, I love this person so much. Can I capture them on the page? Can I write a description of them that makes me feel like someone would read it and know them? Because if you can do that, then you can do that for your characters. These are ways to test yourself. These are ways, they're like exercises in a way, right? And so don't think of your day-to-day life as boring. Don't think of it as mundane. Like, try to capture a moment of it and write it down on the page and see if you can make it interesting. I highly recommend kind of looking at your day and thinking to yourself, is there a moment that I could really capture? Is there a moment I could really write about? Could I capture the feeling, the human existence, like, of that exact moment? And then write about that. You can also like look up writing exercises. There's a ton of them online, different prompts and stuff, and you can write even just like a few paragraphs of it. Like I said, I more think of it as like a warm-up. But also sometimes what I do, I will fully admit, this is maybe an embarrassing thing to admit. I don't know if I want to put this on the internet, but sometimes when something really crazy happens in my life, it's actually easier for me to like write about my feelings from the perspective of one of my characters. And I'll just like kind of imagine that my character is going through something that would make them feel however I feel in that moment, and I write it from their perspective instead of my own. So many of the passages that are in my actual book come from me doing that, and it wasn't my intention usually when I sat down to do that kind of thing for it to end up in the book. But at some point then later in writing, I would think to myself, oh, I think I have this already. And I start to like flip through my journal and I'm like, I do have a moment they were really anxious. I did already write that. And not only that, but sometimes when you are writing about your own feelings, you'll read it back and you'll be like, wow, that actually ended up really nice. And then you might like change some of the verbiage of it to make it match one of your characters and then throw it in the book as well. And my last piece of advice is maybe kind of out of left field for everything else that I've been saying, but it is to like your tools. I always use the Archer and Olive journals because I really like them. I did the subscription box for a while, but I will tell you, I don't like that in the subscription box you don't always get like the A5 size, because as you can tell from the ones that I was picking for myself, this is the size that I usually really like. But when you do the subscription box, they send you all kinds of different sizes. So like this is one of the sizes. I think this is way too big for me. I get really intimidated by the giant page when I'm journaling sometimes. I wish they had a version of it that only had A5 journals, or that just had all the like extraneous stuff, because I found that like the stickers and the washi tape and the pens, like journaling with that kind of stuff is super fun, and it does make it kind of an art form in itself. It makes you want to do it more, in my opinion, and like have a really pretty journal. I'm not very artistic with like drawing, so like having stickers and pens and stuff to help me does really help me make my journals look a lot nicer, even though I definitely like cross out things and like write things in the margins and stuff too, so like half of them are nice and half of the pages are like really crazy to look at. Yeah, I just felt like the different sizes, and they send you a lot. Like it is actually a good deal for the price. Like you typically get 2 journals in each one, and for the price that the journals are usually to buy themselves off of the website, the subscription box is a good deal. But then I have this backlog of journals that are like all kinds of weird sizes that I just haven't even really gotten to because it's taken me so long to get through this one because of how big the actual pages are. Then I end up with this huge backlog of journals, and I just kept feeling like, oh, I gotta get journaling so I can use these up. And I think as you start to think of it like that, it's gonna like prevent you from being able to journal super well. Like there has to kind of be nothing riding on the journaling, like I said in my first piece of advice, for you to really benefit from it, I think. Yeah, that was why I ended up canceling it. But the funny thing is that I canceled it after this last one that they sent out, and then this most recent one that they sent out in June had a journal cover in it that had spaces for like pens and washi tape, and I've wanted something like that for literal years, and I've like tried to find stuff on Etsy and I've just never really seen anything I liked. And so I did actually like re-sign up for the subscription to get this box, and it's arriving today, and then I'm gonna cancel it again because I just don't think I'm gonna use the journals up. If you journal often enough to like use up the journals, that is a fantastic deal, and the journals are like really high quality. and I love them. And if they ever went out of business, I literally don't know what I would do. I might actually lose my mind because I've been using them for so many years now. I literally don't think I could journal on like another brand of journals now because I like their paper so much. Do I have any here? I do, of course I do. I'm a G2 girly for my pens. I have so many of these just like lying around my house so I can just pick them up and start writing wherever I'm at. So yeah, that was kind of my last piece of advice, is like sometimes like the journal itself, if you're annoyed with like the words bleeding through the pages, or if you feel like your pen skips and stuff, like you can get nicer journals, you can get nicer pens. Like the pen itself like doesn't really skip or writes really well. That is an option. Pretty simple one today, just more my thoughts about like how journaling has benefited my writing and like why I think something you should work into your writing sessions. Love and appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.